I was standing at my kitchen counter with a cardboard box in front of me, a box that had just been returned to me from my ex-husband's house after his death, and I had the flaps open, and I was looking down at my own handwriting. Dozens of envelopes. My handwriting on every one. Birthday cards and letters I had mailed to my daughter over 17 years, and every single one of them was there in that box, in front of me, on my counter, and not one of them had ever been opened. I want you to sit with that image because I had to. 17 years of letters I had sent out into what I believed was my daughter's life, and here they all were, come home, the envelopes still sealed. My knees actually gave a little, and I had to hold the edge of the counter, because in the space of about 4 seconds, standing there, I understood that the story I had told myself about my own daughter for 17 years was not true, and I did not yet know what the true story was. My name is Connie Doyle. I am 57 years old, and I run a small alteration shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I take in hems and wedding dresses and the small repairs of other people's lives. I am going to tell you what was in that box and what it did to 17 years of grief I thought I understood. Because for 17 years, I had believed my daughter Megan had chosen to leave me. That belief was wrong, and the truth was sitting, sealed, in a box the whole time. Let me take you back to where the silence started, because the silence is the thing this whole story turns on. My ex-husband Doug and I divorced when our daughter Megan was 17, nearly grown, but not quite. It was not a violent divorce, but it was a sad and bitter one, the way they often are, and when the dust settled, Megan stayed close to her father. I want to be fair about that. She was almost an adult, she chose where she was comfortable, and she chose Doug's house. It hurt me, but I understood it, and I did not fight it. I told myself that she was grown enough to keep her own relationship with her mother, that we would stay close in the way mothers and grown daughters do, by phone and by letter and by visits. For the first year or two, in a thin way, we did. And then it began to fade. The calls got shorter, then rarer. My letters started getting briefer replies, then no replies. Visits fell through. And I, on the other side of it, did what a hurt person does. I built an explanation. I decided that Megan, growing up, building her own adult life, had simply outgrown her mother, that she blamed me, somehow, for the divorce, that she had quietly chosen her father's side and was, just as quietly, letting her mother go. It was a painful story, but it was a story that fit the facts I could see, and so I believed it. I want to tell you about one specific moment, because it is the moment I decided the story was true. About 4 years after the divorce, I called Megan on her birthday, and a man answered her phone, a boyfriend I had not met, and he said she was out and that he would tell her I called. She never called back, and I sat in my kitchen that evening and I made a decision about what that meant. I decided it meant she had not wanted to call back. I decided it meant the message had been passed along and ignored. I did not, for 1 second, consider the simpler and truer possibility that the message had never been passed along at all. That is the thing about a story like the one I was building. Once you have decided someone is letting you go, every piece of evidence gets read through that decision. A missed call is no longer a missed call. It is a verdict. I spent 13 more years reading verdicts into things that were only ever silence. But here's the thing I did. The thing that matters, the thing that this whole story would not exist without. I kept writing. I did not stop, even when the replies stopped completely, even when years went by with nothing coming back. I kept sending letters to my daughter. Every birthday, every Christmas. Small ones, a card, a few lines, a photograph sometimes, news of her grandmother, a pressed flower from the garden. I told myself I was not really expecting an answer anymore. I told myself I was just refusing to be the one who stopped, that as long as I kept a thread out there, kept reaching, then I had not abandoned my daughter, whatever she had decided about me. For 17 years, I mailed letters into silence, the way you might keep a porch light on for someone you have stopped truly expecting to come home. There were years I almost stopped. I want to be honest about that. There were birthdays when I stood at the mailbox with a card in my hand, and felt like a foolish old woman mailing things to a daughter who had made her feelings perfectly clear with 17 years of silence. My own sister told me, more than once, gently, that I should let it go for my own sake, that I was only reopening the wound twice a year. And she was not wrong to worry. But I found I could not do it. Not because I had hope exactly. The hope had mostly worn through. It was something stubborner than hope, something closer to refusal. I refused to be a mother who had stopped writing to her child. Whatever Megan had decided about me, I did not want it to ever be true that I had gone quiet first. I kept writing so that the silence, whatever it was, would at least never be mine. I did not know it at the time, but that stubbornness is the only reason this story has the ending it has. Doug died last winter. We had not spoken in many years, and his death reached me secondhand, and I grieved it the complicated, muted way you grieve a person you once built a life with, and then could not. And a few weeks after the funeral, his sister, who was clearing out his house, called me. She said she had found a box in Doug's closet with my name on it, and that she would send it along. I did not think much about it. I assumed it was old things of mine, left behind in the divorce. I told her thank you, and I more or less forgot about it, until the afternoon it arrived, and I opened it on my kitchen counter and found 17 years of my own sealed letters looking back at me. I have thought since about how close that box came to never reaching me at all. Doug's sister could so easily have looked inside, seen a jumble of old envelopes, and simply thrown the whole thing away as the clutter of a dead man's closet. She told me later that she had almost done exactly that she had opened the box, seen the letters, and only paused because she noticed my name and Megan's name over and over on the envelopes, and thought in passing that it seemed like something a family might want. A passing thought. 17 years of the truth, and the rest of my life with my daughter, rode home on one woman's passing thought in a doorway. I do not take that lightly. I think about it every time I look at the box. The truth does not always fight its way back to you. Sometimes it survives by the thinnest accident, and the only thing you can do is make sure that, if it ever does come, you have not given up the thread it needs to reach you by. I stood there and I went through them, slowly, with shaking hands. Every letter I had sent Megan, from the first faded years right up to the card I had mailed just last spring. All of them. Unopened. And the postmarks told the story. They had been mailed to Megan's addresses. Real addresses. Addresses I had kept careful track of over the years. They had not been lost. They had been delivered. And then, somehow, every single one had ended up in a box in her father's closet. But that was not the worst of it, because underneath my own letters, in that same box, was a second bundle. A bundle of envelopes that were not in my handwriting. They were addressed to me, to my shop, to my home, in handwriting I would know anywhere, because I had watched it form when she was 6 years old, learning her letters at my kitchen table. They were from Megan. 17 years of letters from my daughter, addressed to me, that I had never received, never seen. They had been mailed and intercepted, and they had ended up in the very same box as mine. My daughter had been writing to me for 17 years, and I had never gotten a single one. And I understood it all at once, standing there. She had never gotten a single one of mine. I picked up the oldest of Megan's letters with hands I could not keep still. It was postmarked from a little over 16 years ago, and the envelope was soft and worn at the edges from sitting in a box for that long, and it had been mailed to my old address, the apartment I had lived in right after the divorce. It had reached that mailbox. Someone had taken it out of that mailbox, and I realized, holding it, that I had spent 16 years thinking of my early divorce life as a time when my daughter had not written to me, and that the truth was that she had, that her words had physically arrived at my door, and that they had simply been removed before they could reach my hands. It is a strange and terrible thing to have a piece of your own history rewritten while you stand at a kitchen counter. For 16 years, I had owned a memory of being unwritten to. The envelope in my hand told me that memory had never been real. I had to sit down on my kitchen floor because the shape of 17 years was rearranging itself, fast, and it was almost too much to hold. There had been no silence. There had never been a silence. There had been two women, a mother and a daughter, each writing faithfully to the other, year after year after year, and a man in the middle, taking every letter, in both directions, and putting it in a box. I read Megan's letters that night, all of them, in order, on the floor, until the sun came up, and it was the hardest and most precious night of my life, because my daughter had not left me. My daughter, in those letters, was reaching for me as hard as I had been reaching for her. The early ones were a young woman's letters, chatty, a little awkward, telling her mother about a job, a new apartment, a boyfriend. And then, as the years went on and she got no answer from me, I watched her letters change, and it broke my heart in a way I am not sure it will ever fully mend. I watched my daughter slowly come to believe, on her side of the silence, the exact mirror of the lie I had believed on mine. I watched her start to wonder why her mother never wrote back. I watched her decide, in a letter from about 10 years ago, that I must blame her for taking her father's side in the divorce. I watched her, in a letter from only a few years ago, write a sentence I will never forget. She wrote, "I don't know why I keep sending these when you clearly don't want them, but I can't seem to stop." She had kept her porch light on, too. Neither of us had ever known the other one's light was burning. There was one letter of Megan's, from about 7 years ago, that I have read more times than any other, and that I almost cannot speak about even now. In it, she told the mother she believed had abandoned her, that she had just had her first child. A daughter, my granddaughter. And Megan wrote that she had nearly not sent the letter at all, because what was the point of telling news to someone who never wrote back, but that in the end, she could not stand the idea of her mother not knowing she had become a grandmother, even if her mother did not care. And she wrote, at the bottom, a single line that I had to put the letter down to survive. She wrote, "I named her after you anyway." My granddaughter carries my name. For 7 years she has carried my name, and for 7 years I did not know she existed, and the woman who named her spent those years believing I had not bothered to reply to the news of her birth. Doug had that letter. Doug read that letter, I have to assume, and chose to put it in the box. I have tried, and I cannot find the bottom of what that means about the years he stole. And so I had to face the question that the box forced into the room. Why? Why would Doug do this? Quietly, meticulously, for 17 years. Intercept the mail in both directions between a mother and a daughter who only wanted to find each other. I have thought about little else, and I want to be honest, because the easy answer, that Doug was simply a monster, is not, I think, the true one, and the true one is sadder. Doug was a deeply wounded man when our marriage ended, and a frightened one, and I believe what he was most frightened of in those early years was losing Megan to me, that if Megan and I stayed close, she would drift back toward her mother, and he would be left alone. I think it started small. I think the first letter he held back, he told himself he was protecting Megan from being unsettled, from being pulled in 2 directions. And I think that is how these things always start, small and dressed up as protection. But a man who holds back one letter and sees that it works and feels the fear quiet down, that man holds back the next one, and the next, until 17 years have gone by and the box in the closet is full, and confessing has become utterly impossible, because to confess would be to admit he had stolen his daughter's mother and his ex-wife's daughter, year after year, on purpose. So he never confessed. He just kept the box. And he let 2 women he had once loved each believe she had been abandoned by the other. I have wondered, of course, why Doug kept the letters at all. A man covering his tracks would have burned them. He had 17 years and 100 chances to make that box disappear, and he never did. He kept every envelope, from both of us, carefully, in his closet, until the day he died. And I have come to believe, though I will never be able to ask him, that the box was Doug's own quiet torment. I think he could not bring himself to deliver the letters, because delivering them would undo the thing his fear had built. But I think he also could not bring himself to destroy them, because to destroy them would have made it final, would have made him, in his own eyes, fully the man who had done this. So he did the coward's middle thing. He kept them. He kept the evidence of his own crime in his closet for 17 years, neither finishing it nor confessing it. I do not think Doug died at peace. I think he died with a box in his closet that he could not look at and could not throw away. And I think, in the end, that box was a sentence he served just as surely as the one he handed Megan and me. I will not pretend the anger was small. For a while, the anger at Doug was an ocean. He had taken 17 years. 17 years of my daughter's life, of her 2 children's childhoods that I now know about only from letters. 17 years that cannot be returned to me by any apology, least of all from a man already in the ground. There is no making that right. I have had to accept that some of what Doug did is simply, permanently, lost, and that no reckoning is available to me because the person responsible is beyond any reckoning now. But here is what I decided, and I decided it on that kitchen floor with my daughter's letters around me. I decided I would not give Doug the rest of it. He had already taken 17 years. If I let the anger at him swallow whatever years Megan and I had left, then he would get those too. He would get them from inside his grave. I was not going to allow that. The box was a horror. But the box was also, I realized, the most miraculous thing that had ever come to my door, because the box did not only tell me what I had lost. The box told me that my daughter had loved me, faithfully, the entire time. It told me there was nothing to repair between Megan and me. There had never been a wound between us at all. There had only ever been a man and a box, and now the man was gone and the box was open. I want to say one more honest thing about the anger, because I think anyone who has lost years to someone else's choices will understand it. The hardest part was not even what Doug had done. The hardest part was that I could not have it out with him. There would be no conversation, no confrontation, no moment where I got to stand in front of Doug and make him look at what he had built. He had died before the box ever reached me, and so he had escaped, in a sense, the one thing I most wanted, which was simply for him to have to know that I knew. For a while that felt unbearable, the unfairness of a reckoning permanently out of reach. But I have come, slowly, to a strange kind of peace with it. Because chasing a reckoning from a dead man is its own kind of box you can shut yourself inside. And I had just been handed the keys out of 17 years of grief. I was not going to spend my freedom locked in a smaller room, knocking on a coffin. I let it go. Not because Doug deserved to be let go, but because I did. I found Megan's current address in the most recent of her letters, and I did not write her one more letter into the silence. I had done 17 years of that. Instead, I got in my car, and I drove, and I went to my daughter's front door, and I knocked on it, holding the box. I am not going to be able to give you that moment in a way that does it justice. There are no words sized for it. My daughter opened her door and saw her mother standing there for the first time in many years, and I watched her face begin to do the thing faces do when they are about to close. The bracing, the old hurt. And I did not let it. I just held up the box, and I said the only thing there was to say. I said, "Megan, he kept our letters. All of them. Both ways. You never left me, and I never left you." And I watched 17 years of a lie fall off my daughter's face, all at once, and I watched her understand. And then my grown daughter put her head on my shoulder in her own doorway, and we stood there and cried for what I think was a very long time. Neither of us, it turned out, had ever stopped being the other ones. We had only been told that we had. We sat in Megan's kitchen for the rest of that day and most of the night, and we did the work of 17 years in a single sitting, which is not really possible, but we tried. She told me what she had believed all that time, that I had chosen, after the divorce, to start a clean life without the daughter who reminded me of it. I told her what I had believed, that she had chosen her father and then chosen to let her mother fade. And as we laid the two false stories side by side on our kitchen table, the cruelest thing about them became clear. They fit. Each lie had been built well, by our own grieving minds, out of real seeming pieces. The missed calls, the unanswered letters, the years, and each of us had been able to believe it precisely because the other one's silence seemed to confirm it. We had each been the unwitting evidence for the other's heartbreak. Doug did not have to do much in the end. He only had to remove the letters. Our own fear and our own love did the rest, building the wall brick by brick from opposite sides, each of us certain the other had laid the first stone. A year has passed now. Megan and I are not trying to pretend the 17 years did not happen. You cannot, and it would be a kind of lie of its own to try. There are things that are simply gone. I missed her wedding. I missed her becoming a mother, twice. I am a grandmother to 2 children who spent their early childhoods not knowing my face. And we are building something now, the 4 of us, but we are building it on ground where there should already have been a garden. That is a real grief, and Megan and I let each other have it. We do not rush each other through it. My granddaughter, the one who carries my name, is 7 years old now, and she has met me. That first meeting is something I will keep for the rest of my life. Megan brought her to me and said, "This is your grandmother, the one you are named for." And the child looked up at me with a kind of careful curiosity, the way children do, and she said she had not known she had this grandmother. And Megan knelt down and told her, gently, that she had always had me, that I had been here the whole time, that it had been a long mix-up, and that the mix-up was over now. A long mix-up. That is the phrase Megan chose for a 7-year-old, and I have thought about it since, because it is, in its plain way, exactly true. 17 years, 2 women, 1 box, and underneath all of it, no real estrangement at all. Only the longest, cruelest mix-up, and a child on the other side of it who is now, finally, climbing into her grandmother's lap. But we read the letters together now. That is a thing we have done. We sat down, the 2 of us, and we read 17 years of our own unread mail, side by side, in order. It was like recovering correspondence between 2 people who had loved each other the whole time and simply never been allowed to hear it. Every letter of mine she never got, she got. Every letter of hers I never got, I got. It does not give back the years, but it gave back the truth of the years, the truth that we were never estranged, never cold, never lost to each other. We were only ever interrupted. And an interruption, however long, however cruel, is a different thing entirely than an ending. We did not get an ending. We got a 17-year interruption, and then we got the rest of it back. There is one thing we did with the letters that I want to tell you about, because it surprised us both. When we had finished reading all 17 years of them, Megan asked me what we should do with them now, whether we should keep them, or whether the box was too painful a thing to have in a house. And we decided, together, to keep them, all of them, in order, in a proper place. Because we realized something. Read straight through, those letters are not really a record of a tragedy. They are a record of 2 people who, given 17 years of total silence and every reason to believe they had been abandoned, never once stopped writing. Not 1 year. Not 1 birthday. The box is the proof of what Doug did. But it is also, and more importantly, the proof of what Megan and I did, which was to refuse, separately, in the dark, for 17 years, to ever let go of each other. I would rather my granddaughter grow up knowing that story than not. The box stays. It is the most painful thing we own, and it is also the truest love letter either of us has ever received. I want to leave you with the 2 things this taught me. The first is about silence, and what we decide it means. When someone we love goes quiet, stops calling, stops writing, stops reaching, we almost always fill that silence with the same story, and it is a story about rejection. They have chosen this. They do not want me. They have let me go. I believed that story about my own daughter for 17 years, and it was completely false. And it was false the entire time I was certain of it. So I am asking you, if there is a silence in your life that you have explained to yourself as someone choosing to abandon you, consider, just consider, that you may be wrong. A silence has more than one possible cause. Sometimes the other person is silent too, on their side, believing the very same lie about you. Sometimes there is a box and a person standing in the middle. Before you accept that someone stopped loving you, make very sure that what you are looking at is truly their choice, and not just the absence of a message that someone, somewhere, did not let through. The second thing is about reaching anyway. For 17 years, I wrote letters I believed no one wanted, into a silence I believed would never answer. There were so many years when it felt pointless, even foolish, like talking to a wall. But because I never stopped, because I kept that thread out there even when I had lost all faith in it, there was something for the truth to travel back along the moment the truth was finally free. If I had given up in year 5, if I had let the hurt convince me to stop, the reunion in that doorway could not have happened the way it did. So, if you are reaching for someone and getting nothing back and wondering whether to stop, I cannot promise you a box will ever come home. But I can tell you that the people who keep the porch light on are the ones who are still findable when the lost finally come up the road. Keep reaching. You may be reaching towards someone who is reaching back, in the dark, just as hard as you are. If this story landed for you, drop the word "returned" in the comments below. I read them. It tells me which stories are worth telling next. Subscribe for new stories, real patterns, full narratives, the long game. 2 small pieces of wisdom from this one before I go. First, do not let a silence write its own explanation. When someone stops reaching for you, the mind rushes to the cruelest reading. They chose this. They do not want you. They let you go. But silence is only an absence, and an absence can be caused by 100 things that are not rejection. The other person may be silent too, believing the same false story about you. Someone may be standing between you. Before you grieve a relationship as ended, make certain the silence is truly a choice, and not just a message that never arrived. Second, keep reaching, even into what feels like nothing. The letters that feel most pointless to send, the ones into a silence that never answers, are sometimes the very thread that the truth will one day travel home along. If you give up reaching, you may not be findable on the day the misunderstanding finally clears. Keeping the porch light on can feel foolish for years, but it is the porch light, and only the porch light, that lets the lost ones find their way back to your door. Silence is not always the answer it seems. I'll see you next time.